Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast. Oh boy, 500 episodes in the making. A guest that needs no introduction, and our listeners will know that because we literally have a drinking game for every time I bring up his name. Andrew has to take a drink because I mention things he writes and things he says on his podcast so often. The man who's literally the reason that I do this, and why I'm so beyond appreciative that he is kind enough to join us for a few minutes. ESPN Zach Lowe. Hello, sir.
What's up? How you doing? Thank you for the kind words. They're ridiculous, but I will take them in a world of a lot of negativity and all sorts of bad stuff everywhere. I have learned to just take the nice words and not deflect them away as I used to do.
I'm working on that. I gotta say, you are, of all the reasons that like you have been an inspiration to me, because I know we lean the same way on a lot of things. The way that you can kind of just like, I'm going to have a podcast in which I talk about basketball, which is nonsense compared to all of the other things, but you do it and you do it so well. So, thanks for that.
I do my best. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's all we can do. Let's jump right into it because I don't have you for I could talk to you for hours about this wretched basketball team that I was.
Stop. We're going negative right off the bat.
I'm going realistic. They're not wretched. They have been wretched at times over the last 20 years, as you know. They are not wretched right now, and that is a good thing. And I'm happy about that. And I'm happy to have a conversation about what I think is a competent team. But I do have to start here because, Leon Rose, it's been 27 months now with this regime. And like, look, we didn't need Windhorst to go on TV when they were hired and say something's going on in New York. No, we knew what was going on in New York. We knew what the plan was from day one. They were brought here to bring a certain type of player to New York. That player is not yet here. Just, you talk to more people than anybody. What do people around the league, media, teams, anything, do they think this group has a clue what they're doing above like, hey, let's just keep kicking the can down the road. Eventually we're going to get, that guy or those guys, or is there more skepticism than maybe meets the eye?
It cuts both ways. There definitely is more of a sense that the Knicks have a plan than there was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, when they were seemingly just flailing at every shiny object in sight. Yes, the CAA star has not come yet. And that was sort of the implied expectation, maybe upon at least the one that fans had upon Leon Rose and World Wide West coming aboard. I do think I would like to revisit alternate universes where the Suns and the Wolves don't all of a sudden get good and competent, which I think the Knicks were wagering against, as many other teams were wagering against. And now Devin Booker and Karl Towns seem to be staying put for the foreseeable future. But the Knicks, they've struck out on the big names. Last season was incredibly frustrating. I can't imagine, I have to watch all 30 teams. So I didn't watch 82 games of Julius Randle jab stepping from the left elbow and taking fadeaway jump shots. I can imagine that grew frustrating after 17 games. I don't know.
A tad.
But ignore the sound of the printer printing something right now if that's interrupting you.
That's Julius Randle faxing you a picture of a thumbs down emoji.
Yeah, it could be. I did enjoy that though. That was a fun plot twist when he started thumbs downing. But they haven't hemorrhaged anything in the future. They've kept their quiver of draft picks pretty clean and pretty full. I thought what they did at this year's draft was fine. Like everyone hated it. They traded out of 11 may be the best pick in all that big transactions of picks that they made, but they got future stuff. They've held on to the future picks. They're armed to make a trade. I think Toppin's interesting. Quickly's interesting. Barrett's going to be really good, is already really good. We'll see what the Mitch deal looks like in a couple of years. And I don't even think the Brunson deal is that bad. So yeah, I mean, like they're kind of on the treadmill of mediocrity, but they haven't expended any of their future to be mediocre. And I think their plan all along has been, we got to do kind of what the Nets did in a different way, which is be good and competent for a sustained period of time and then strike while the iron's hot. The key is going to be, they've gone after Carmelo Anthony. They went after Amari Stoudemire. They always seem to get, I guess, other than Melo, the consolation prize. Like they can't, when they put their chips in, it can't be for the wrong guy. And
so
that's what the next thing is.
Let's stay there for a second, because you mentioned a bunch of guys I want to get back to in a minute. But and you mentioned the quiver, and it's the biggest quiver in terms of stuff that they've had, arguably. I mean, since I've been watching the team. And now here comes a guy, Donovan Mitchell, who I think you said it on your pod, the last pod or the one before that, I forget. What is he? The 20th best player in the NBA, 18th? I don't know. Whereabouts, right? I think they could probably go get him if they put in enough stuff, because I mean, I know if I was Danny Ainge, one of the things I'd like to add to my repertoire is future unprotected New York Knicks draft picks. But if they do that, then what do they have left? And then on the flip side, if they don't do it, well, then it's like, well, what are you waiting for? As best as I could tell, the plan is to let's hope he doesn't get traded this offseason, whether it's Brooklyn or Miami, kick the can down a little further. Maybe some of the assets appreciate, maybe Randle refine some, whatever stuff happens that's good. And then maybe a year from now, that trade, whether it's for Mitchell or someone else, looks a little different. Am I doesn't that have to be the plan right now?
Yeah. And I think first of all, I think what are we left with question is much less urgent for a team trading for Donovan Mitchell than it is for a team trading for Kevin Durant, because Donovan Mitchell is young enough that if you don't have a championship window in years 1 and 2, it's not that big of a deal, because you can look at Donovan Mitchell as the carrot to get the next guy to come here, and we'd have to open up cap space. You do a sign and trade, whatever. It's not an urgent window. And the other thing is, as time passes, a year from now, there's going to be a new disgruntled star. The players who just signed their supermax extensions become trade eligible. Something goes haywire with one of them. There's always new people. I don't know what's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell. I've already said I don't really buy we're retooling around him line that's coming out of Utah, and I've heard competing intel, as others have said. I mean, we'll see what happens. The next month or two is going to be telling. I mean, you can the Kevin Durant nexus of whatever you could connect Kevin Durant in a spider web diagram to 9 teams, one of which could be Utah in the end, and not necessarily to trade Donovan Mitchell. Maybe Utah ends up an 8 team, maybe, who knows? But the next month will be maybe telling on that front.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. It sounds like you're don't lift a gift horse in the mouth if it's, I don't know what it would be, quickly and salary and for future unprotected. I'm just throwing stuff against the wall.
The word unprotected makes me nervous, but the Hawks and the Wolves have set the market now for
talk to me about LaMarcus Aldridge and Joakim Noah and who else we got? We got Jamal Murray and Gordon Hayward. It's just, I know the pain, Zach. I know I know the pain.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it is amazing to go back and look at some of those deals. Gordon,
it's Hayward, an all-NBA team.
Isn't Hayward somehow in the Marbury deal? Isn't that that where the Hayward pick is? It's just a crazy zigzag of how did this end up being a Knicks pick that turned into a good player? Oh, that's right. That trade from 7 years before.
I mean, we could go back to Scottie Pippen, but we don't have to.
No, let's not do that today. You got the Scottie Pippen revenge. Hollins gave you the Scottie Pippen revenge. Okay.
So yes, the word unprotected is frightening, but look, but that's the thing. It feels like Ainge can hold. If Leon Rose made the call today, it's come on, let's get this done. It feels like he could hold Leon's feet to the fire now more than ever. And if anything, the Knicks negotiating position, would it get better if they waited it out? Do you think, or you don't think it'll make a difference?
I think Danny Ainge is going to wait to get whatever deal is good for Utah if he even decides to trade Donovan Mitchell. I think the main reason why Utah got such a shocking, to most people at least, bounty of picks from Minnesota is that Danny Ainge was fine holding on to Rudy Gobert. That was what the Wolves were negotiating against. They weren't really negotiating against the Hawks or the whoever, name a team that needs a center or wants a center. They were negotiating against Utah, being yeah, we're good, man. We'll run it back unless you just bowl us over, and they bowled them over.
You mentioned some of the Knicks young players. Let's, a general question first. I think and you kind of already answered this, I guess, when you said RJ is already really good and has a chance to be really special. Would it shock you if another young player on this roster ended up being better than RJ Barrett? Because within the fan base, there is kind of an understanding he is the guy. Some people think he's really the guy. We'll get to that in a second. But, you know, I like you find some of these other pieces. In particular, I think Obi Toppin and Quentin Grimes is growing on me real fast, even though he fits a certain type of archetype. So, yeah, would it shock you if someone ended up being better than RJ Barrett?
Better in the sort of like traditional, really good NBA player sense. Yes. Like in terms of, can he get me 20? What does he look like on the ball? Can he get me 5 assists? All of that. Like RJ Barrett's going to be the best of all these guys at that. And in his last 2 months of last season, I think were real. And he's in a really interesting spot with the Knicks, because I thought last year, for a lot of the year, he was kind of trapped between this like Julius Randle offense and then, oh, wait, we got Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, and we still have Derrick Rose, and they run the offense. And RJ Barrett is at times a good shooter, at times a shaky shooter, a guy who I think needs the ball a lot and didn't get it that much for like extended periods of time. And to his credit, made himself a pretty good 3-point shooter, especially from the corners. I mean, you guys probably know the numbers off the top of your head better than I do.
The year before, he was like, I think he hit more from, I forget which corner it is, than anybody like in the league. Yeah, he was good from there. And
I think he's got all the tools to be a solid defensive player. I think he's a good passer. The dilemma that the Knicks are going to find with him, and this is a first world problem, is a team with RJ Barrett as the number one ball handling option has a pretty firm ceiling. So what does RJ Barrett look like on a team with a higher ceiling? And does he have the tools to excel at that role? And I actually think he probably will. It's just a matter of sort of reconstructing the team and his game to fit that role.
I think putting like off the dribble 3-point shooting aside, which like is that it's like the number one. Yes, we want it skill for like any on-ball player in the league. For me, the playmaking is the thing for him. Like if he's like 24 or 25 and he's putting up like 6 assists a night, that's my number one, like realistic. Can we get there? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, totally. I think he's a good passer. I think he reads the floor pretty well. As a pick and roll ball handler, I'm interested in sort of the secondary ball handling, kind of playmaking coming more from him. But the team has sort of been, again, confused with what its identity is on offense, and too much Randle all the time has sort of stagnated that part of his game. But yeah, I think that was always my goal for like when Tatum blew up 2+ seasons ago. Yep. The passing was always the question. And I said, I remember writing, like, I don't ever see Tatum becoming like an 8 or 9 assists a game kind of guy. Now he may prove me wrong. He's that good. Yeah. But if he gets to like the Dwayne Wade 6.5 with his scoring and his defense, that's all you need. He's a number one option. He's an MVP candidate. That's it.
And with RJ, like I you know what? Let the finishing around the rim, even if it stays around 57, 50, it's not here yet, but I'm assuming you get it up to like 57, 58%. If he is going to get to the line like he did from New Year's Eve onwards last season, when I think he was like 12th in the NBA in free throw attempts a game from that point forward, like I'll live with that. You've now mentioned his name twice. Do you still maintain ownership of the Julius Randle? Was it a condominium? Was it something on a hill? Was it a beachfront? Was it like a cabana?
It was a mansion at the top of Julius Randle Hill, and we rented it out. We put it on the rental market in the middle of last season. We just had to get out there, relocate, get a change of scenery for the year. But I can't sell it now, so I still have it. I still think look, the jump shooting from the All NBA season was crazy, and it's not surprising that he wasn't able to duplicate that. Last year just went out of whack, and I don't know what it was, if it was expectations, if it was clashes with the coaches, the fans thing was really weird. Like, just settle down and become a good, like 18-6-6, 18-8-6 kind of player who tries hard on defense all the time. Like, that player is a really good player. Like, there's definitely, could he thrive in 5-out basketball in a way he can't with Mitch Robinson near the rim because he can't be a roller? Like, all that's fair, but he's still a good player. I thought last year I would love to talk to him about like what the hell happened. It was just a weird season.
It's only a topic we've raised about 12 dozen times over the course of the last year as we watched this human being disintegrate before our eyes. Like you mentioned on your pod, I think the term you used was he's eminently gettable. I was thinking to myself, like the flu is eminently gettable. Like if a kid run around a park without their shoes on, like cocksacky, that's eminently gettable. These are not things that you want. Does any NBA team look at Julius Randle right now and be like, you know what? We bet if we get him in here and off the pressure in New York, we think that we could help, maybe not what it was 2 years ago, but something closer to that than what we saw last season? Or do you how do teams view him, if you had to say?
I think they want to, there's certainly some curiosity. I think the length of the extension has put the rest of the league, that curiosity, and sort of wait and see. Like no one's really eager to do anything now. I think another team could get Julius Randle for probably not very much in terms of assets. I think for that to change, the first few months of this season have to go well on a number of fronts. But I do think there is curiosity about him. Like he's an interesting, good player.
I almost wonder, is his destiny in the NBA as honestly, kind of what he was in New Orleans, where it's like he's kind of a six man, like quasi starter, playing a lot of center, but is he making too much money for that role? I don't know. That's kind of where I've resigned myself to. I think that may just be a way to get past what we witnessed last season.
The money is not.
He's the 50th highest paid player in the league. It's
not crippling as the cap will continue to go up. It's 25, 27, 29 player option in the last year. That is too much for a sixth man. Yeah. And what you're really asking is this is why everyone was fascinated with the idea of Randle and Porzingis, or Randle and Miles Turner, or Randle and a stretch five. That was the dream. Yeah. Open the floor for him, but those guys are just hard to find.
Yeah. You mentioned Obi Toppin. You have spoken glowingly about Obi, which is music to every Knicks fan's ears. And you mentioned, I think you said it on a recent pod, good things just seem to happen when he's on the floor, and you could go by on-off numbers for that. You could go by any number of things. You don't even need the numbers because you just kind of see it. And again, it kind of relates to the Randle thing. If you were Leon Rose, and I was even thinking almost a decade ago when the Raptors traded Rudy Gay, I forget what they got back for Rudy Gay in that deal, but
a fully functioning NBA bench.
There you go. Is there almost an addition by subtraction here thing at play, or have you not seen, or if you were running the Knicks, have you not seen enough yet from Obi to say look, it's ham sandwich time with Julius Randle. Let's just move in this other direction.
What is ham sandwich time? I trade you for a ham sandwich?
That is yes. I'll give him credit because I don't think I might. Alan Sepinwall, that was his turn when we were talking about this.
I like ham sandwiches. Ham sandwiches are pretty good.
Ham sandwiches are delicious. I put some melted cheese on. I prefer melted cheese on my ham sandwich, but that's me.
There's nothing wrong with that. How about this? More music to Knicks fans' ears. How about we see them play together for more than 50 minutes in a season? How about we see Randle and Toppin together and just see kind of what that looks like? Because that's a fast, potentially switchy, interesting lineup full of speed and playmaking. I don't know what the aversion is to playing that lineup, other than we got to have a rim protector out there at all times. And Taj Gibson is grandfathered into as many minutes as he wants. And Taj is fine. He plays pretty well when he tends to play. But how about that? How about we give that lineup a little shot?
Well, you just excommunicated yourself from the Church of Tibbs. I don't know if that was a valuable place where you like to worship on your off days, but I think that's where we're at.
Let's give it a shot. Just give it a chance. But yeah, so what you're really asking is Randle, the addition by subtraction thing, is Randle just blocking this guy from playing and thus blocking a different construction of the team that is more interesting?
For sure.
I'm not ready to go there quite yet.
Okay.
But I think he needs to play more. And if that means he needs to play more with Randle, then so be it. But good things seem to happen when he's on the floor. He's fast. He's energetic. He's a decent playmaker in space. He can jump out of the gym. He tries really hard. The shot obviously needs some work, but he's confident taking it for the most part. And you need to see if the good things seem to happen is an indictment of the Knicks starting lineup. So of course the bench all has great on-off numbers because the starters have been such a sinkhole, or is it because of what this guy does and who's in tandem with him driving that? I need to know more. I feel like I know more about Immanuel Quickley, even though I don't really know what Immanuel Quickley is in the NBA, than I do about Obi Toppin. And that for me is a problem if I put a Knicks hat on and think about the team. Yeah.
Considering you just spent the 8th pick on the draft on him 2 years ago, and we're still asking those questions now. As you said, Quickley, we know a little bit more about. I'm sure you noticed it was really kind of the last 20 games to third of last season. He seemed to reach he didn't make like a leap or anything, but there was a figuring out of stuff that was happening in real time as a driver, as a passer, as a foul drawer. I still think he tops out as like a 6-man, maybe a really good 6-man on a really good team. Are you curious about Quickley in a way that maybe is not apparent that, to onlookers right now?
I'm just pulling up his numbers right now.
The shooting numbers are still not like he
the
looks
2-point
like
shooting is problematic.
Yes.
40% as a rookie, 45% last year. That's part of the reason I am curious about Immanuel Quickley, because he is such an audacious shot taker and the numbers do not back up the audacity. And yet when they go in, I'm like, I like this guy. This guy.
He hit 91 pull-up threes last year, which is not an insignificant number.
And he's like 30 feet out. Cool. I'm Immanuel Quickley. I'll take him. I'm like, okay, man, that's fine. Like, it's kind of entertaining to watch. And like you said, I even wrote about it in my 10 things column late last season. He had a string of like 5, 6, 7 assist kind of games. He's a great rebounder. I'm not really sure how he does that, but he had a bunch of good assist games, like making the cross-court pass on the pick and roll to the corner shooter at the right time, faking that pass, hitting the roll man, like doing the kind of manipulative stuff that makes you think, oh, okay, there's something interesting going on here. And he's only, 22 years old? Maybe he's turned 23.
22, 23, some of that.
He just turned 23 19 days ago.
Happy birthday, man.
It made you think, does he need more of a shot? Like, he's pretty long for the point guard position. Like, could be an interesting player, but if you had to force me to guess now, I do think he probably ends up a really good 6th or 7th man. And that's doesn't sound great to Knicks fans, but for a pick in the 20s or wherever he was picked, like that's a great outcome. Yeah.
We love Immanuel Quickley here. So we've just talked about Obi, we talked about RJ, we talked about Quickley. We don't have to talk about Grimes. I mean, I think Grimes, we'll see what he is, but
we'll see. We'll see. The glimpses last year were encouraging. I thought
I'm a fan of his. Cam's the mystery box. We don't have to talk about the mystery box right now.
It's not going great.
It's not ideal. Do you think he plays on a different team opening night? I do, for what it's worth.
We're getting late in the transaction period. Well, I guess not, because Durant is holding the rest of it up. There was so much noise about him at the draft and nothing happened that I'm tempted to say maybe he does open the season for the Knicks. But
okay,
I don't know.
So they have all this young stuff, which is great, and they go out and get Jalen Brunson. I'm a huge fan of Jalen Brunson just because I don't need to tell you why I'm a huge fan of Jalen Brunson. It's obvious. But that is a player you ostensibly signed when you were trying to win games. And I feel like a lot of the criticism the Knicks have gotten from, not from you, from others, who have analyzed their offseason is like, this is the direction they should be, meaning all the kids. This is where they should be going. Just whatever, go lose 50 games. And then they go out and sign Brunson to go and kind of thread this weird needle. Do you appreciate that criticism? Where do you come down on Jalen? Where do you come down on like kind of this, what they are attempting to do this year?
There's definitely a risk that they have capped themselves out between Randle and Brunson. That's 50-something million a year now going forward. And traded some future assets, not so many that I'm like really losing sleep over it, mostly second round picks, to be a mediocre team with no clear pivot out of mediocrity. Like, I don't think this team, if you just kept this same roster together for 3 years, I don't think this is like becoming a 55-win team. But on the other hand, like, Joe Brunson's a good player. I like being in the business of getting good players. And the criticism kind of strikes me as unfair because everyone's been begging the Knicks to get a functional starting point guard for 5 years. Oh, they missed out on Brogdon. They missed out on Red Van Vliet. They missed out on XYZ. Oh, Kemba didn't work out. And then they go get a young functional point guard for $25 a year, which is not as bad as people thought it was going to be. Quite, people were thinking, is it going to be the max? Oh my God. And people ripped them for it. And Jalen Brunson might be like the 17th, 18th, 19th best starting point guard in the NBA. Okay. Like, they're not going to tank. I don't know, like, pick a direction. Okay. I mean, sometimes picking a direction is about the timing of it. Like the Spurs just nailed it. The Jazz just nailed it. The time just isn't right for the Knicks. They think they have other paths open to them. Let's see if they can actually execute those paths.
Two more, and then I'm going to get you out of here because I know you're have a heart out. if you were a Knick fan, what is the number one realistic or semi-realistic, have some fun with it, thing you are rooting for this year? Whether it's something to happen to another team, another player gets agita with his organization, something that happens on the court with one of the young guys, anything.
I mean, I already feel like I don't have to hope so much for the Jazz situation to go haywire. So I'm going to list that on the back burner because that's rickety already. And I don't need to maybe push it over the edge. I'll say I end the year with more clarity about what Barrett and Toppin are going to be offensively, that the offense evolves in a way that crystallizes a little bit of what those guys will look like on a good functional NBA team in extended minutes. And I don't know how that works or what the rotation ends up being, but I want to get out of this year thinking, okay, RJ Barrett is this and Obi Toppin is this, and they're good at these things offensively. And that's how they fit into the puzzle piece of a really good team. And maybe that's Toppin becoming a stretch four, like a proper stretch four for parts of games. Maybe that's Randle developing some sort of post-up game. Maybe who knows what it is, but that just more, not Randle, Barrett. Some clarity about what those guys are. Cause I can't end this season. I can't end this season being like, those guys have still got a lot to learn about Obi Toppin and RJ Barrett. Like it's too late. I got to do more learning.
You mentioned like a nexus of Kevin Durant. My nexus of RJ Barrett has like Jimmy Butler in like one top corner and like Jaylen Brown in the other top corner. And there are reasons he's never going to be as good at the things that those guys are the best at. But if there's like a world, he could be like 80, 90th percentile at certain things in both. Is that fair to you?
Yeah, he's a really interesting package of skills, and he can do a lot of things. I think that's why he's good at a lot of things. What is he going to be great at? And what are the Knicks best served at him getting great at are the questions.
I just have to ask this. I dedicate all my energy to this team, and it feels incredibly draining at times, and I still don't feel like
you've made a success out of it. You can't say that. You're rolling, man. It's great.
It's been great. It's been wonderful because I have to pay attention to all 29 teams to a certain extent to know what I'm talking about. You are the only media, and I don't say this to like build myself up because like God knows I'm not trying to do that. You're the only national media person who I read and watch and listen to, who like, he knows more about the Knicks than me. He is better at analyzing the Knicks than I am. And it's one of 30. So how do you do it, Zach? I have to ask.
The dirty little secret to my job is that I watch basketball. Like that's really all it is. Like
I'm eat your vegetables, right? Two games a day, right?
2 games a day minimum, sometimes 2.5, sometimes 3. If I'm on West Coast time and I just have extra time and waking up at 5 a.m. randomly or something, or if there's a crunch time I want to see from the previous night. And I tell people this all the time. It's the simplest, dumbest advice. I watch the game. I'm not on Twitter. My phone, I only take calls if it's really important during a game, and I pause it. So I'm not half watching 7 minutes of the game. I'm, for better or worse, not on the exercise bike watching a game, half watching it. Like I'm just sitting there watching a game, occasionally taking notes. And my wife always jokes, like some of my buddies like, oh man, I really would love to watch a game with you. And my wife's like, no, you wouldn't. It sucks. Like it's totally antisocial and boring. And like he rewinds stuff. It's maddening. Even she doesn't like to do it. And honestly, like, I just think that's how you learn the game is then you got to talk to people and all that. But like the part of it is just, and it sounds easy, but it doesn't sound easy to me. But it is fun. Like it's basketball. Watching basketball is fun. Yeah, it's great. But if you're watching 2.5 games a night, you have no life. That's your life. That's your night life. That's your evening life. You're not going to parties. You're not hanging out with your friends for 8 months of the year, which is totally fine. That's the quote unquote, it's not a sacrifice. That's just the job. But I just think you just got to watch a lot of basketball. You learn a lot about the players and the schemes, and you notice certain things, and you watch the Knicks one night. The key is you got to watch every team enough so that when they try something different, you realize right away, oh, that's different. That's a different substitution pattern. I don't remember them using that scheme. And that opens up all sorts of interesting questions. That's the key.
Well, you've watched the Knicks a lot over the years, enough to fittingly Christen them the Kazoos. I'm hopeful.
That's not my fault. That's whose fault the Kazoos is.
We don't have to. We don't have to say his name. Hey, the T-shirt you're wearing, New York Mets. They got a new owner a few years ago. They're doing pretty good. Maybe it's karma. Maybe I think have they at least moved past Kazoo? I think is that. So are we there yet or no?
The saddest. I shouldn't say the saddest.
No, please.
One of the last things I wrote for Grantland before it shut down was, and I'm so glad I wrote this. I had obviously had no idea the site was going to shut down, and otherwise I would not have had a place to write this kind of thing. Was the Mets made the World Series in 2015, and I was living in Queens at the time, obviously the borough that the Mets play in, and it was just Mets mania. And I remember driving somewhere. We didn't even have a car, so I don't know where I was driving. I must have zip card somewhere. And I was listening to the Francesa's radio show. And the point of this is I hadn't followed baseball
I remember the column well.
In 10 years. And Francesa is on the radio. Francesa, the ultimate Yankees homer, a guy who you hate love as a Mets fan, is sitting there saying this Mets pitching staff is the best pitching staff he's ever seen, the best young pitching staff he's ever seen since the 70s Orioles of Jim Palmer and all that. And I'm sitting there the Mets were the most important thing in my life outside my family. And honestly, they're not going to listen to this, rivaling my family from 1984 to 2003. And then as my career went on, as my social life and my marriage and all that, I just sort of you don't have time to watch. I watched every game when I could. When I was in college, I refreshed Netscape to try to follow the game pitch by pitch. I watched every game. That's you can't make that commitment as you become an adult person with responsibilities. Then the NBA comes in and I just can't, there's not room for another sport. And they make the World Series and I know 3 guys on the team and it just broke my heart. And now they're good again. They'll fuck it up because that just seems to be what happens. But they're good. Everybody, remember Generation K?
I remember.
Generation K, Paul Wilson, Bill Pulsifer, Jason Isringhausen, they all fucking got hurt because that's what happens to the Mets. So they'll fuck this up too. But it's so I'm glad the Mets are doing awesome. I'm just out and it hurts me every day because I'm literally 84 when I was 6-7 years old to 2003. They were a top 2 most important thing in my life. The only jersey I own, actual jersey, full on replica, real official jersey, the one you pay a stupid amount of money for, is number 9 Todd Hundley. That's the only one I own in any sport.
Fantastic. It's a great jersey.
I'm still angry at Armando Benitez, for game 1 of the Subway Series. It's the most painful sports moment of my life. Nothing will ever top it. I knew the World Series was over as soon as that game ended. They were not going to win the World Series because that was such a gut punch. I knew it was going to happen. I never trusted Armando Benitez, ever.
John, can I jump in and commiserate with Zach Lowe for a second? Not only am I still mad at Armando Benitez, this wave of analytics that's tried to tell me he's actually the second greatest reliever in Mets history. No, all I have are bad memories of Armando Benitez. Game 1 in 2000, during that end of the season run after 9/11, he blew 2 games against the Braves, blew a big game against the Diamondbacks in 2002.
Why are you bringing Zach's memory back to this?
Let's not forget 1999, where they were trying to come back from 3-0 against the Braves. He blows the 9th inning in Turner Field. Right there with you, Zach.
I remember talking myself into oh man, they traded for Billy Taylor from the A's, the side armor, that's going to really show up the bullpen. He stunk as soon as he got to the Mets. Benitez, people don't believe me when I say this. There were chips in my parents' living room wall from me throwing the remote over rage at Armando Benitez and John Franco blowing saves and blowing leads. I just can't trust those guys. But you can't trust anybody. They all get all the relievers choke in the playoffs except Rivera, which is so infuriating on about 50 different levels.
It's the other team it's literally the other team that we grew up around fans of that got to watch the greatest closer of all time. We don't have
time for me to tell you guys the story of game 1 of the 2000 World Series. I just can't do it. I think
we got a gist of it with the paint chips in the wall being gone.
But now they're good, right? They're good. The owner tweets a lot. I know who the owner is. He's obviously Stephen Cohen, huge finance guy. He tweets a lot. They have a lot of pitchers. They're probably all get hurt. One of them was just coming back from injury. But they're the Mets, man. My dad taught me at a very young age, son, could pick any baseball team you want. He didn't want me to be a Red Sox fan. He's a Red Sox fan. He thought it would just be a lifetime of pain. So you can pick any team you want. I might advise you a National League team. The Mets are your local team. Your mother's from Pittsburgh. The Pirates are pretty good. The first baseball game I ever went to was at Three Rivers Stadium. You just can't pick the Yankees. That's the only thing. That's the only rule of the house.
That's why we love you, Zach.
That is one of many reasons. Zach, can't thank you enough for everything. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I owe you everything.
Oh,
Nick,
stop.
No. 10 seconds or less. The reason I started writing about basketball is because of you. So for what it's worth, thank you for that. And thank you for continuing to cover the sport because it's more fun when you do it.
That's mind blowing to hear. Congratulations on 500 episodes. I know the grind. From going from outsider to insider and how much work it takes. And for every person that tries it and succeeds, there are 9 who try it and give up because it's really, really hard and they have to make money and they have to find a way to support their families. So hats off to you. And look, I live in Connecticut now. I was a New Yorker for 20 years. I didn't grow up liking the Knicks. In fact, I grew up not liking the Knicks. But God, would I love a world in which New York City had 2 playoff teams. Just let me go to home playoff games for as long as possible. That's all I want. The colors, the jerseys, they don't mean anything to me anymore. Just give me home playoff games.
I will buy you an extravagantly priced beverage at MSG if and when that day comes and I can see you there.
Sounds good. Let's go Mets.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zach Lowe.